The council chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive ring of metal and glass that orbited a dead star. Inside, representatives from 40 different species sat in their designated seats watching the floor below. The air smelled of recycled oxygen and alien perfumes that made human noses itch. Captain Jiwon Park stood alone on the speaker's platform. Her dark blue uniform looked plain compared to the glowing robes and armor worn by the aliens around her. She kept her hands clasped behind her back, her face showing nothing. Around her, the chamber buzzed with whispers and strange sounds that served as laughter for species without mouths. Above her, on the highest tier, sat the Caltherian representatives. Their bodies were covered in chitinous plates that reflected the chamber's lights like black mirrors. Admiral Vexthor leaned forward, his four eyes focused on the small human below. When he spoke, his voice came through translators as deep and grinding, like stones crushing together. "Earth sends one ship," Vexthor said, and the chamber erupted in sounds that the translators rendered as laughter. "One small vessel to face the Fifth Fleet, 200 warships of the Caltherian Empire, and you send one frigate." He spread his upper limbs wide. "Is this surrender? Have you brought us a tribute?" Jiwon didn't move. She had been briefed on this moment. Expected it. The mockery was part of their culture, their way of establishing dominance before the killing began. She waited for the laughter to die down, counting her heartbeats. 62 beats before the chamber grew quiet enough for her to speak. "The terms are simple," Jiwon said, her voice steady and clear. "One ship from Earth will meet your Fifth Fleet at the coordinates provided. Neutral space, the Torvak Belt. If we win, Earth maintains full sovereignty. If we lose, we submit to Imperial authority." This brought fresh waves of alien laughter. A delegate from the Vorian cluster, a species that looked like floating jellyfish, pulsed with colors that meant amusement. Such confidence from a species barely out of their own solar system. The translator rendered its thought speech. "Your ships still burn chemical fuel. You fight with metal slugs while we wield plasma and antimatter." Ambassador Hyunwoo Nam sat in the human delegation box, watching Jiwon below. He was older, with gray threading through his black hair, and his hands gripped the armrests of his chair. This was his plan, his gamble, and if it failed, Earth would lose everything. He had argued for months with the Earth Council, convincing them that this was the only path. Show strength, prove humanity couldn't be pushed around, or spend the next century as servants to an alien empire. "Captain Park," Vexthor's voice cut through the noise, "I accept your terms. It will be educational for the younger species here to witness what happens to those who defy the Empire. We will broadcast the battle across all council channels. Let it serve as a lesson." Jiwon gave a slight nod. "Understood. The Taeguk will be at the designated coordinates in 72 hours. "The Taeguk," Vexthor repeated, and his translator couldn't quite hide what might have been amusement. "Named after your planet's flag? How sentimental. My flagship, the Eternal Dominion, looks forward to adding your vessel to our collection of defeated enemies. We preserve one ship from each conquered species. Yours will make a fine display." Jiwon turned to leave the platform, but Vexthor wasn't finished. "Tell me, Captain, when you burn in the void, what should we tell your family? That you died bravely? That you served your primitive world with honor?" For the first time, Jiwon allowed herself a small smile. It wasn't a happy expression. "Tell them we did what humans do best. And what is that?" Vexthor asked. "We adapted." The word hung in the air as Jiwon walked away from the platform. The aliens didn't understand. They couldn't. But Hyunwoo Nam understood, and he felt the slightest release of tension in his chest. Jiwon had delivered the message perfectly, planted the seed of doubt without revealing anything. Now everything depended on the Taeguk and her crew. Later in the human delegation's quarters, Jiwon stood at the window looking out at the stars. Behind her, Hyunwoo poured 2 glasses of water. "No alcohol, not now. They needed clear heads." "They think we're fools," Hyunwoo said, handing her a glass. "Good," Jiwon replied. "Fools are underestimated. Underestimation creates opportunities. The Fifth Fleet has never lost a battle. 200 ships, Jiwon. Even with everything we've prepared, the odds are impossible." Jiwon took a sip of water. The odds were impossible when humans first looked at the stars and decided to reach them. The odds were impossible when we built our first faster-than-light drive from salvaged alien technology and prayers. We've been living on impossible for 3 generations. Hyunwoo moved to stand beside her. Out there somewhere in the darkness, the Fifth Fleet was already moving into position. The Caltharanes were confident enough that they'd announced their staging area publicly. They wanted witnesses. They wanted fear. "How's your crew?" Hyunwoo asked. "Ready. Minho has run every tactical simulation we have. Yoonji has the engines calibrated beyond factory specifications. Salman and her weapons team have been sleeping in the armory." Jiwon paused. They know what's at stake. Do they know they might not come back? They volunteered anyway. Every single one of them. Jiwon turned from the window. "We picked the crew carefully. Everyone aboard the Taeguk understands this is bigger than individual survival. This is about proving Earth belongs among the stars." Hyunwoo nodded slowly. "I've been a diplomat for 20 years. I've negotiated trade deals, mining rights, and cultural exchanges. I've smiled at species that consider us barely sentient. And every single time, I've had to swallow the disrespect because we didn't have the strength to demand better." "That ends in 72 hours, Jiwon said. "One way or another." They stood in silence for a moment. Two humans carrying the weight of their entire species. Outside, alien ships moved past the station, sleek and elegant, powered by technologies that Earth was still trying to understand. The galaxy had been exploring the stars for thousands of years while humanity had barely managed a few decades. The technological gap was enormous. The cultural gap even larger. But Jiwon had seen the alien ships up close. She'd studied their designs, their tactics, their assumptions, and she'd found something interesting. Every alien species in the Council had evolved along similar paths. They'd discovered energy shields, so they'd built energy weapons to penetrate them. They'd made their ships fast but delicate, relying on shields for protection. They'd automated their systems, trusting computers to handle the chaos of battle. Humans had gone a different direction. Not because they were smarter, but because they'd arrived late to a galaxy already filled with established powers. Earth couldn't compete with alien technology, so they'd focused on what they could build, what they understood. Kinetic weapons, redundant systems, human intuition over artificial intelligence. It made Earth's military look primitive, backward, weak. That was the point. "I should get back to the Taeguk," Jiwon said, finishing her water. "The crew will want to run final checks." Hyunwoo walked her to the door. "Jiwon, when this is over, when you've done the impossible, Earth will remember." "History will remember." She paused at the threshold. "I'm not doing this for history. I'm doing this because someone has to show the galaxy that humanity doesn't kneel." As Jiwon walked down the corridor toward the docking bay, alien delegates passed her. Some pointed. Others made sounds that might have been mockery or curiosity. She ignored them all. In 72 hours, the talking would be over. The posturing would end, and the Taeguk would show the galaxy what humanity had learned in its short, violent history: that the most dangerous opponent is the one everyone underestimates. 2 weeks earlier, Earth. The Geneva Space Command headquarters sat deep underground, protected by 30 meters of reinforced concrete and adaptive camouflage that made the entire facility invisible from orbit. Inside the main briefing room, Captain Ji-won Park sat at a long table with 4 other people. The weight of what they were about to do pressed down on everyone present. Admiral Doyon Han stood at the head of the table. He was a broad-shouldered man with scars on his hands from his years as an engineer before climbing the ranks. His gray uniform was crisp, but his eyes showed the tiredness of someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. "The Caltharanes gave us an ultimatum," Doyon said, pulling up a holographic display. The image showed Earth, small and blue, surrounded by red markers indicating Imperial fleet positions. "Submit to their authority or be destroyed. They've given us 6 months to decide. That deadline is now 6 weeks away." Lieutenant Min-ho Kang leaned forward, studying the display. He was young for his rank, only 28, but his tactical mind was sharp enough that he'd been pulled from the Lunar Defense Academy specifically for this mission. "They're positioning fleets at every major jump point around our system. They want to make sure we can't run even if we wanted to." "We're not running," said Engineer Yoonji Choi. She sat with her arms crossed, her short hair still messy from working a double shift in the propulsion labs. "We've been preparing for this since first contact. 50 years of being treated like primitives, 50 years of being dismissed. Everything we've built has been leading to this moment." Dr. Soman Lee nodded in agreement. She was the oldest person in the room besides the Admiral, her hair completely gray, her hands stained with chemical burns that even modern medicine couldn't quite erase. She'd spent 3 decades developing weapons systems that everyone said were obsolete. The galaxy thinks our technology is backward. They laugh at our kinetic weapons. They mock our chemical and nuclear propulsion. They don't understand that we built everything specifically to counter their advantages. Admiral Doyen changed the holographic display. Now it showed a ship, the Teguk. From the outside, it looked like a standard human frigate, blocky, inelegant, covered in sensor arrays and communication dishes that made it look cluttered compared to the smooth lines of alien vessels. "This is our answer to the Caltherian Empire," Doyen said. "Ambassador Hyunwoo has negotiated terms. 1 ship against their 5th fleet. If we win, Earth keeps its independence. If we lose, we submit. 200 ships against 1, Minho said quietly. They agreed to those terms because they think it's a joke. "It is a joke," Doyen replied. "Just not the one they think." He gestured to Dr. Somin. "Explain the weapons." Somin stood and the hologram shifted to show the Teguk's internal structure. "The aliens use energy shields. Every species in the galaxy has them. They're effective against plasma weapons, particle beams, lasers, all forms of directed energy. So every military in the galaxy focuses on building stronger energy weapons to penetrate stronger shields. It's an arms race they've been running for thousands of years." She highlighted a section of the ship. "We don't have energy shields. We never developed them because we arrived too late. And by the time we made contact, everyone else was already so far ahead that we couldn't catch up. So we went a different direction. We asked a simple question. What do energy shields not stop?" "Matter," Jiwan answered. She'd been quiet until now, listening, absorbing, physical objects moving at high velocity. "Exactly," Sumin said, and her eyes lit up with the excitement of someone explaining her life's work. Energy shields are designed to deflect or absorb energy. They create a barrier that disperses heat and electromagnetic radiation, but a solid chunk of tungsten moving at relativistic speeds. She smiled. It passes through like the shield isn't even there. The hologram zoomed in on the Teguk's primary weapon system, the Cascade Railgun. It fires tungsten carbide penetrators accelerated to 0.3% of light speed. At that velocity, a 10-kilogram rod carries the kinetic energy of a small nuclear weapon. And because it's solid matter, alien shields can't stop it. Minho whistled low. "How many rounds can we carry?" 400 standard penetrators, 50 heavy bunker busters, and 20 specialty rounds for specific targets. Somin pulled up firing solutions. "The challenge isn't carrying capacity. It's heat dissipation. Every shot generates enormous thermal energy. Fire too fast and we melt our own barrels. Which is where my team comes in," Yunji said, standing up. She pulled up engine schematics. "The galaxy uses ion drives, antimatter engines, zero-point energy systems. All very efficient, very elegant, very limited in terms of raw acceleration. They can't change direction quickly because their systems are optimized for fuel efficiency and sustained thrust." She highlighted the Teguk's propulsion system. "We use nuclear pulse propulsion, controlled nuclear explosions behind a pusher plate. It's loud, it's crude, it burns fuel at an absurd rate, and it can generate bursts of acceleration that will pull 40 gravities for short periods." 40 Gs will kill the crew," Minho observed. "It will kill unprotected crew," Yunji corrected. "We've got inertial dampeners salvaged from alien tech, improved them, combined them with liquid immersion acceleration couches. The crew will survive. Barely. But the ship can move in ways no alien vessel can match. We can dodge, we can jink, we can change direction faster than their targeting computers can compensate." Admiral Doyen let them talk, watching their faces. These were Earth's best. Not the strongest, not the most numerous, but the most adaptable. Humanity's greatest weapon had always been the ability to look at a problem and find a solution that no one else had considered. "There's one more system," Doyen said. "The spinal mount." The room grew quieter. Everyone had heard rumors, but the spinal mount was classified at the highest levels. Dr. Somin pulled up the schematic, and there it was. A coil gun that ran the entire length of the Teguk, from bow to stern. "It takes 8 minutes to charge," Somin said. "It draws power from every system on the ship. Life support drops to minimum, shields go offline, even the Cascade Railgun has to stop firing. For 8 minutes the Teguk is vulnerable." "What does it fire?" Jiwan asked. Somin pulled up an image of a long, sleek projectile. "Depleted uranium penetrator, 5 tons, accelerated to 2% of light speed. At that velocity, it carries enough kinetic energy to crack a moon. It's a ship killer. One shot and whatever it hits ceases to exist. One shot, Minho repeated. Against 200 ships. One shot is all we'll need, Soman replied. If we use it right. Admiral Doyen stood and everyone fell silent. Captain Park, you'll command the Taeguk. Lieutenant Kang, you're tactical officer. Engineer Choi, you'll manage propulsion and power distribution. Dr. Lee, you'll oversee weapon systems personally. The rest of your crew has been selected and is waiting aboard ship. He paused, looking at each of them. You need to understand what you're volunteering for. The odds of survival are minimal. The Caltharanes have never lost a fleet engagement. Their tactics are proven, their crews are experienced, and they have overwhelming numerical superiority. But they're arrogant, Jiwon said. They've won so many times that they've forgotten how to fight an enemy that doesn't follow their rules. Exactly, Doyen agreed. Humanity has been fighting itself for thousands of years. We've perfected warfare against opponents who think like us, who adapt like us, who refuse to give up like us. The aliens fight with honor, with established tactics, with predictable strategies. We fight to win. He pulled up the tactical display again. You'll meet them in the Torvak belt. It's an asteroid field, dense enough to provide cover, close enough to neutral space that the Council will enforce the terms of the engagement. Use the asteroids, use your maneuverability, use every advantage we've built into the Taeguk. Yoonji stood. When do we launch? 18 hours. The trip to the Torvak belt will take 3 days at maximum cruise. That gives you time to drill the crew, run final systems checks, and prepare. Jiwon stood as well and the others followed. What are our rules of engagement? Admiral Doyen's expression hardened. There's only one rule, make them regret underestimating humanity. Show them what happens when they back us into a corner. Show them why Earth doesn't kneel. As they filed out of the briefing room, Jiwon caught Doyen's arm. Sir, if this doesn't work, it has to work, Doyen interrupted. Because if it doesn't, Earth becomes a servant world. Our children will grow up bowing to alien masters. Our technology will be controlled, our expansion limited, our future decided by species that see us as inferior. He met her eyes. So it has to work, Captain. There is no alternative. Jiwon nodded and left. Outside, the others were waiting. Together, they would crew Earth's answer to the Caltharian Empire. One ship, built from supposedly primitive technology, crewed by humans who refused to accept that the odds mattered. In 3 days, they would face 200 warships and prove that humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology or numbers. It was the stubborn refusal to accept defeat. The Torvak belt hung in space like a frozen river, thousands of asteroids tumbling slowly in the void. Some were small as houses, others large as cities, all of them spinning through the darkness in ancient orbits. The belt stretched for millions of kilometers, a neutral zone that belonged to no one, claimed by no empire. Admiral Vexthor stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, watching the tactical display. His flagship was enormous, 3 kilometers of Caltharian engineering that bristled with weapons and gleamed with the dark beauty of polished chitin. Around him, the rest of the Fifth Fleet spread out in perfect formation. 200 ships organized in precise geometric patterns that demonstrated imperial discipline and power. The human vessel has arrived, reported his tactical officer, a younger Caltharian whose plates still showed the bright colors of youth. Single contact, bearing 270, distance 400,000 kilometers. Vexthor activated the visual display. There it was, the Taeguk. Even smaller than he'd expected. Maybe 200 meters long, covered in what looked like repair patches and mismatched armor plates. It drifted at the edge of the asteroid field, seeming to hesitate. Look at it, Vexthor said to his bridge crew. This is what Earth sends to face the might of the Empire. A ship that looks like it barely survived its journey here. Laughter rippled through the bridge. The Caltharanes had been fighting wars for 3,000 years. They'd conquered 47 star systems. They'd never lost a fleet engagement, never retreated from battle, never shown weakness. And now, a species that had only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago, thought they could challenge Imperial authority with a single outdated vessel. Open communications, Vexthor ordered. Let's give them one final chance to surrender with dignity. The communication channel opened and Captain Jiwon Park's face appeared on the screen. She sat in a command chair that looked utilitarian compared to the carved throne Vexthor occupied. Behind her, Vexthor could see a bridge that was cramped and functional, with crew members strapped into acceleration couches. Captain Park, Vexthor said, spreading his upper limbs in what the Caltherian culture considered a generous gesture. You have traveled far to reach this moment. I offer you one final opportunity. Surrender now, return to Earth, and tell them to submit peacefully. I will even allow you to keep your ship as a gesture of imperial mercy. Jiwan's face showed no emotion. Declination acknowledged. Engaging. The channel cut off. Vexthor stared at the blank screen for a moment, then made a sound that the translator would have rendered as contempt. So be it. Tactical, prepare to fire. All ships weapons free. Let's end this quickly. Aboard the Taiguk, Jiwan pressed the ship-wide communication button. All crew, this is the captain. Battle stations. May our ancestors watch over us, and may Earth remember what we do here today. Lieutenant Minho sat at the tactical station, his hands dancing across the controls. Fifth Fleet is powering up weapons. I'm reading energy spikes across their entire formation. They're preparing a massed volley. How many ships are targeting us? Jiwan asked. All of them, Minho replied. 200 ships, approximately 6,000 plasma torpedoes inbound in 30 seconds. In the engineering bay, Yoonji Choi strapped herself into the propulsion control seat. Around her, the nuclear pulse drive hummed with barely contained power. Her screen showed fuel reserves, thermal levels, and the delicate balance of systems that would keep them alive. Captain, engines are ready. I can give you 40 G burns for up to 8 seconds per burst. Any longer and we risk structural failure. Dr. Somin Lee spoke from the weapons control station. Cascade railgun is charged and ready. I have firing solutions on primary targets. Spinal mount is beginning charge cycle. Jiwan took a deep breath. Everything they'd trained for, everything humanity had built, came down to this moment. Yoonji, on my mark, full burn directly toward the fleet. Toward them? Yoonji's voice showed surprise. Captain, the plasma volley, trust me. Minho, calculate the exact moment when their torpedoes reach optimal tracking lock. Minho's fingers flew across his console. 15 seconds to optimal lock. Their targeting systems will achieve maximum accuracy at 12 seconds. Yoonji, at 11 seconds, execute evasive pattern Delta 7. Minho, I want firing solutions on any ship that gets isolated from the main formation. The Taiguk began accelerating toward the Imperial fleet. On Vexthor's tactical display, it looked like the human ship was committing suicide, charging directly into the teeth of the most powerful fleet in the sector. They've lost their minds, Vexthor's tactical officer said. They're coming straight at us. Let them, Vexthor replied. Their bravery won't save them. Fire. 6,000 plasma torpedoes launched from the Imperial fleet. They streaked through space, leaving trails of ionized particles, each one guided by sophisticated tracking systems. The torpedoes adjusted their trajectories, predicting the Taiguk's course, preparing to converge on a single point and vaporize the human ship. On the Taiguk's bridge, Minho counted down. 8 seconds to lock, 7, 6. Jiwan watched the tactical display. The plasma torpedoes were beautiful in a terrible way, a constellation of death spreading across the void. Any normal ship would try to run, to dodge, to retreat. But the Taiguk wasn't built to run. 5, 4, 3, Yoonji. Now. Engineer Yoonji triggered the nuclear pulse drive at maximum power. Behind the Taiguk, a small nuclear device detonated against the pusher plate. The ship lurched sideways at 40 gravities of acceleration. The inertial dampeners screamed. The crew felt like they were being crushed by giant hands. And the Taiguk moved in a direction that no computer had predicted. The plasma torpedoes, already committed to their trajectories, flashed through empty space. 6,000 weapons designed to kill the Taiguk found nothing but void. A few tried to redirect, but plasma torpedoes weren't designed for extreme course corrections. They spread out into the asteroid field, detonating against rocks and each other in spectacular bursts of light. On the Eternal Dominion's bridge, Vexthor watched in disbelief. How did they move like that? What kind of propulsion system generates that much instantaneous acceleration? Unknown, Admiral, his tactical officer replied. Our sensors detected a nuclear detonation, but the ship survived it. They're using the explosion itself for thrust. Barbaric, Vexthor said, but clever. He straightened in his command throne. All ships adjust formation. Close the net. They can't dodge forever. The Imperial fleet began to move, spreading out to surround the Taiguk. It was a standard Caltherian tactic, one they'd perfected over millennia. Surround the enemy, cut off escape routes, then crush them from all sides. It had never failed. But Minho had anticipated this. Captain, they're executing a containment formation. They'll have us surrounded in 2 minutes. Perfect, Jiwan said. Soman, are you locked on target? Dr. Soman checked her displays. As the Imperial fleet spread out to surround them, several destroyers had pulled ahead of the main formation, eager to be the first to claim the kill. One destroyer in particular had broken formation completely, moving to cut off what its captain thought was the Teguk's escape route. I have a solution on the lead destroyer, Soman reported. Range 200,000 kilometers. Target is accelerating at 0.3 G, bearing steady. Firing window in 5 seconds. Fire when ready, Jiwan ordered. Soman pressed the firing control. Deep in the Teguk's spine, magnetic coils energized in sequence. A tungsten carbide penetrator, 10 kilograms of dense metal accelerated down the railgun barrel. In a fraction of a second, it reached 0.3% of light speed and launched into space. The destroyer never saw it coming. The penetrator crossed 200,000 kilometers in 2 seconds. The ship's energy shields, designed to stop plasma and particle beams, didn't even register the solid projectile. The tungsten rod punched through the destroyer's hull like it was paper. The kinetic energy released was catastrophic. The penetrator continued through the ship, through its reactor, through its crew compartments, and out the other side. Behind it, the destroyer simply came apart, torn to pieces by the massive energy transfer. But the rod kept going. It hit a cruiser behind the destroyer, punched through that ship's hull, and continued. Then a third ship, a frigate that had been in the wrong place at the wrong moment. The single penetrator traveled through 4 ships before its energy finally dissipated in the shield of a dreadnought. 4 ships. 1 shot. On the Eternal Dominion, the bridge fell silent. Vexthor stared at the tactical display, at the 4 ships that had simply ceased to exist. His tactical officer made a sound of distress. What weapon was that? Vexthor demanded. Kinetic projectile, Admiral. Solid matter, not energy. It passed through our shields because they're not designed to stop physical objects at those velocities. Vexthor's mind raced. This changed everything. If the human ship could fire weapons that bypassed shields, then the entire tactical doctrine of the Imperial fleet was useless. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Don't hold formation. Scatter and attack from multiple vectors. The Imperial fleet, moments ago perfectly organized, dissolved into chaos as 200 ships broke formation. It was a sound decision tactically. The battle became chaos, and in chaos humanity thrived. The Imperial fleet scattered across the asteroid field, abandoning their perfect formations for survival. 200 ships broke into smaller groups, trying to surround the Teguk from multiple angles. It was a reasonable tactical decision against a normal enemy. But the Teguk had been built specifically to fight in exactly this kind of confused, brutal engagement. Lieutenant Minho tracked 60 targets simultaneously, his mind processing trajectories and firing solutions faster than most computers. Years of training against human opponents, where every battle was unpredictable and savage, had prepared him for this. Captain, I have 3 cruisers moving to flank us from Sector 4. They're trying to catch us between their fire and the main group. Yunji, take us into the asteroids, Jiwan ordered. Make them follow us into the rocks. Engineer Yunji triggered another nuclear pulse. The Teguk shot forward, diving into the dense part of the asteroid field where the rocks tumbled in unpredictable patterns. Behind them, the 3 cruisers followed, their captains confident that their superior sensors and shields would protect them from the asteroids. They were wrong. The Teguk wove between the spinning rocks, using brief nuclear pulses to dart and dodge. Yunji's hands moved across her controls with practiced precision, her eyes tracking thermal levels, fuel consumption, and structural stress. The ship shuddered with each pulse, but it held together. Human engineering wasn't elegant, but it was robust. Everything on the ship had backup systems, and those backup systems had backups. The pursuing cruisers tried to match the Teguk's movements. Their ion drives allowed for graceful maneuvering, smooth acceleration, efficient use of power, but they couldn't match the brutal, instantaneous direction changes that nuclear pulse propulsion provided. One cruiser clipped an asteroid, its shields flaring. The impact wasn't enough to destroy the ship, but it slowed them down. Target lock on all 3 cruisers, Minho reported. They're bunched up, trying to maintain mutual support. Dr. Soman checked her targeting display. The Cascade railgun had cooled enough for another volley. I have solutions firing. 3 tungsten penetrators launched in rapid sequence. The railgun barrel glowed white-hot, but the cooling systems held. The first penetrator hit the lead cruiser, punching through its unshielded hull and detonating its reactor. The second penetrator caught the wounded cruiser as it tried to dodge, tearing through its engineering section. The third penetrator missed its primary target, but ricocheted off an asteroid and hit a frigate that had been trying to join the pursuit. 3 more ships gone. On the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Vexthor watched his fleet die ship by ship. 7 vessels destroyed in less than 10 minutes. It was impossible. No single ship should be able to do this. But the human vessel moved through his fleet like a predator among prey, appearing from behind asteroids, firing, then vanishing again before his ships could respond. All ships, converge on coordinates 774, Vexthor ordered. We'll mass our firepower, saturate the area. They can't dodge if there's nowhere to dodge to. 50 Imperial ships moved toward the designated coordinates, preparing to unleash a combined barrage that would vaporize everything in a cubic kilometer of space. It was overwhelming force, the kind of attack that no shield could withstand, that no ship could survive. Aboard the Taeguk, Minho saw the Imperial fleet gathering. Captain, they're massing for a saturation attack. If we're in that zone when they fire, we won't survive. Jiwan studied the tactical display. The Imperials were learning, adapting. They'd realized that precision strikes wouldn't work, so they were switching to area bombardment. It was crude but effective. How long until they're in position? 2 minutes, Minho replied. And how long until the spinal mount is fully charged? Dr. Soman checked her systems. 8 minutes. We're only at 70% charge, Jiwan made her decision. Yunji, get us out of the kill zone. Minho, I want targets of opportunity. Any ship that separates from the main group, take it. Soman, keep charging the spinal mount. We're going to need it. The Taeguk burst from the asteroid field, accelerating at angles that made the crew groan against their restraints. Behind them, the Imperial saturation strike lit up space with enough firepower to sterilize a continent. Plasma bolts, particle beams, and antimatter torpedoes filled the void where the Taeguk had been moments before. But the human ship was already gone, looping around a large asteroid and coming up behind a group of destroyers that had positioned themselves to cut off escape routes. Minho designated targets, Soman fired, and 3 more ships joined the growing field of debris. They're fighting like humans, Vexthor realized, watching the tactical display. They're not following any tactical doctrine. They're improvising, exploiting every opportunity, refusing to fight predictably. His tactical officer made a sound of agreement. Admiral, we've lost 23 ships. At this rate, we'll still win, Vexthor interrupted. We have numbers. They have 1 ship. Eventually they'll make a mistake or run out of ammunition or their systems will fail. We just need to keep the pressure on. But even as he said it, Vexthor felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. The human ship was wounded now. He could see the scorch marks on its hull, the sections where armor had been blown away by near misses. But it kept fighting, kept moving, kept killing his ships. The battle continued for another hour. The Taeguk played a deadly game of hide-and-seek among the asteroids, appearing long enough to fire, then vanishing before the Imperial fleet could concentrate their fire. Minho's tactical predictions were uncanny, almost supernatural in their accuracy. He seemed to know where the Imperial ships would move before their own captains did. How is he doing this? Vexthor demanded, watching another 3 ships disappear from his tactical display. The human tactical officer is calculating pure ballistics, his tactical officer explained. No computer assistance, just mathematics and prediction. He's treating this like an ancient naval battle, using instinct and experience instead of artificial intelligence. Yunji's voice came over the internal comm, strained with exhaustion. Captain, we're at 60% fuel. The nuclear pulse drive is generating more heat than the cooling systems can handle. We're venting atmosphere from the engineering section to dissipate thermal energy. How much longer can you give me? Jiwan asked. 20 minutes at current consumption, maybe 30 if I reduce our burst intensity. Dr. Soman added her own warning. The Cascade railgun barrel is degrading. We've fired 73 times. The barrel's rated for 100 shots before replacement. After that, accuracy decreases and we risk catastrophic failure. Jiwan did the math in her head. They destroyed 49 Imperial ships. Against any other enemy, that would be a stunning victory. But 151 ships remained. and the Taeguk was running out of time, fuel, and ammunition. "Status on the spinal mount?" she asked. 98% charged, Soman reported. 2 more minutes. Jiwan looked at the tactical display. The Imperial fleet had learned from their losses. They were staying in larger groups now, providing mutual support, making it harder for the Taeguk to pick off isolated ships. Vexthor had adapted his tactics, and the cost of each kill was getting higher. "Minho, I need a prediction. If Vexthor was smart, what would he do right now?" Minho studied the enemy formation. "He's lost a quarter of his fleet. His crews are demoralized, but he still has overwhelming numbers. If I were him, I'd accept the casualties and commit everything to one final push. Surround us completely, accept that we'll destroy another dozen ships but ensure we can't escape." "And is that what he's doing?" Minho highlighted sections of the tactical display. "Yes, he's pulling his fleet into a sphere formation. Once it's complete, we'll be in the center with no escape route. We'll have to fight through the entire remaining fleet to break out." Jiwan smiled grimly. "Perfect. That's exactly what we need him to do." Yunji's voice showed confusion. "Captain, if they trap us, they won't trap us," Jiwan replied. "Because they're going to cluster around their flagship. Vexthor commands from the Eternal Dominion, and Caltharian culture demands that the fleet commander leads from the front. Every ship will orient on his position." Understanding dawned on Minho's face. "The spinal mount? Exactly. Soman, how's our charge?" 100%. "The spinal mount is ready to fire." Jiwan stood from her command chair, gripping the armrests as another nuclear pulse shook the ship. "Yunji, I need one more miracle from you. Get us close to the Eternal Dominion. I don't care what it costs." "How close?" Yunji asked. "Close enough that they think they have us. Close enough that Vexthor believes he's won." The Taeguk changed course, no longer dodging and weaving, but driving straight toward the center of the Imperial formation, toward the Eternal Dominion. On Vexthor's bridge, the tactical officer announced what looked like victory. "Admiral, the human ship is making a direct approach. They're out of options. They're trying to ram us." Vexthor leaned forward. "Let them come. All ships concentrate fire on the human vessel. I want it disabled, not destroyed. We'll capture it, study their weapons, and use their own technology against them." The remaining Imperial fleet opened fire. Energy weapons converged on the Taeguk from every direction. The human ships. The spinal mount fired. Every light on the Taeguk went dark. Life support stopped. Gravity disappeared. The only illumination came from emergency strips and the glow of the coil gun, as it discharged 8 minutes of accumulated energy in a single instant. The depleted uranium penetrator, 5 tons of dense metal, accelerated down the length of the ship. Magnetic coils energized and collapsed in sequence, each one adding velocity. In the space of 2 meters, the penetrator reached 2% of light speed. It crossed the 50,000 kilometers to the Eternal Dominion in less than a second. Admiral Vexthor saw it on his tactical display, but his mind couldn't process what was happening. A solid object moving at relativistic velocity, carrying kinetic energy equivalent to a large asteroid impact. His shields, designed to stop energy weapons, didn't even register the projectile. His point defense systems, calibrated for missiles and fighters, had no time to respond. The penetrator hit the Eternal Dominion dead center. Physics took over. At 2% of light speed, the uranium rod didn't just puncture the hull. The kinetic energy transfer was so massive that matter couldn't remain solid. The penetrator vaporized on impact, but that vapor was still moving at relativistic velocity. A cone of superheated plasma drove through the flagship like the finger of an angry god. The Eternal Dominion split in half. Reactors detonated. Ammunition cooked off. The 3-kilometer dreadnought, pride of the Caltharian Fifth Fleet, came apart in an expanding cloud of debris and radiation. Vexthor's last thought was one of understanding. The humans hadn't been fighting to win. They'd been fighting to reach this moment, to deliver this one perfect strike. Everything else had been preparation, distraction, maneuvering the fleet exactly where they needed it. Then the bridge vaporized, and Vexthor ceased to exist. Aboard the Taeguk, the crew floated in darkness. Emergency power kicked in slowly, giving them dim red light. Jiwan unbuckled from her command chair, pulling herself through zero gravity to the tactical station. "Minho, report," she said. The young lieutenant's hands shook as he checked his displays. "The Eternal Dominion is destroyed. Complete kill. The rest of the Imperial fleet is..." He paused, reading the data. "They're retreating. All ships are breaking off and jumping out of the system. Without their flagship, without their admiral, the Caltharian fleet had lost cohesion. The surviving ships, demoralized and leaderless, fled rather than face the ship that had killed so many of their comrades. Yunji's voice came over the comm, weak but alive. "Captain, main power is offline. I can get us emergency propulsion in maybe an hour, but we're dead in space until then." "Casualties?" Jiwan asked. Dr. Soman pulled herself to the medical station. 3 dead in Engineering Section 6 when we lost hull integrity. 17 injured, most of them from high-G maneuvers. The rest of us are bruised and exhausted, but alive. Jiwan closed her eyes for a moment. 3 crew members dead. 3 people who would never see Earth again. She would remember their names, carry them for the rest of her life. But they had won. Against impossible odds, with 1 ship against 200, humanity had proven it belonged among the stars. "Open a channel to Earth," Jiwan ordered. "Let them know we're still here." 1 week later, Captain Jiwan Park stood in the Galactic Council chamber once more. But this time the atmosphere was different. There was no laughter, no mockery. The alien delegates watched her with expressions that ranged from respect to wariness to outright fear. Ambassador Hyunwoo Nam stood beside her, his diplomatic robes crisp and formal. The Taeguk hung in orbit above the station, still bearing the scars of battle, a visible reminder of what had happened in the Torvak belt. The High Chancellor of the Council, a crystalline being whose species had mediated galactic disputes for 1,000 years, spoke with a voice like wind chimes. "The terms of the engagement have been fulfilled. Earth's vessel prevailed against the Caltharian Fifth Fleet. By the laws that govern this council, Earth's sovereignty is recognized and will be respected." The Caltharian delegate, a younger admiral who had assumed command after Vexthor's death, stood. "The Empire acknowledges defeat. We withdraw all claims to human space. Earth will not be molested by Imperial forces." He paused, then added, "We underestimated you. That was our mistake. It will not happen again." Hyunwoo gave a slight bow, the minimum politeness required. "Earth seeks no empire, no conquest. We simply wish to exist as free beings among the stars. We defended our sovereignty. That is all." But everyone in the chamber knew it was more than that. Word had spread across the galaxy. 1 human ship had destroyed 67 vessels of the most powerful military in the sector. The Taeguk's tactics, weapons, and determination had been analyzed, discussed, feared. Every species with ambitions of expansion now had to consider that humans, the species everyone had dismissed as primitive, could fight in ways no one had anticipated. After the official session ended, various ambassadors approached Hyunwoo. The Vorian delegate, the floating jellyfish who had mocked Earth before, pulsed with colors that meant contrition. "Our cluster would like to establish formal diplomatic relations. Trade agreements, cultural exchange. We'll consider it," Hyunwoo replied neutrally. A delegate from the Tavorian Confederacy, a multi-limbed insectoid, skittered closer. "Our military analysts would like to understand your tactical doctrine. Perhaps joint training exercises?" "Perhaps," Hyunwoo said. "We'll discuss terms." One by one, species that had ignored Earth for 50 years now sought its attention. Not out of friendship, but out of the universal truth that power demands respect. Earth had proven it possessed power, and the galaxy had no choice but to acknowledge it. Later, in the human delegation's quarters, Jiwan stood at the same window where she'd stood a week before. The stars looked different now. Still vast, still cold, but no longer hostile. Earth had earned its place among them. Hyunwoo joined her, carrying 2 glasses. This time it was alcohol. They'd earned it. "The Council is calling it the Torvak Miracle," Hyunwoo said. 1 ship against an entire fleet. "They're going to write about this battle for centuries." "It wasn't a miracle," Jiwan replied. "It was engineering, training, and desperation. We just did what humans have always done when cornered." "What's that?" "We refused to lose." She took a sip of the drink, feeling the burn. "How are things on Earth?" "Celebrations in every city. The crew of the Taeguk are heroes. There's already talk of building more ships like her, creating a proper fleet." Jiwan shook her head. "The Taeguk worked because it was unexpected. Now the galaxy knows our tricks. The next battle won't be so easy." "Maybe there won't be a next battle," Hyunwoo suggested. "Maybe we've proven ourselves enough that others will think twice before challenging us." "Maybe." Jiwan didn't sound convinced. "Or maybe we've just painted a target on ourselves." Every ambitious empire in the galaxy now wants to be the one that defeats the ship that beat the Caltharanes. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Hyunwoo raised his glass. To the crew of the Taeguk, living and dead, they carried the hopes of an entire species and they didn't falter. Jiwon touched her glass to his. To Lieutenant Minho, who could calculate miracles. To Engineer Yoonji, who kept us flying when we had no right to. To Dr. Soman, who built weapons the galaxy didn't see coming. And to the three who gave everything so the rest of us could come home. On Earth, the celebrations continued. But aboard the Taeguk, limping back toward home on emergency power, the crew held their own ceremony. They gathered in the observation deck, looking out at the stars, and spoke the names of the fallen. Engineer Yoonji, her uniform still stained with coolant and sweat, raised a makeshift glass. To Technician Junho, who kept the reactor stable even when the ship was tearing itself apart, Dr. Somin added, to Medical Officer Hana, who stayed at her post in Section 6 even when the hull breach alarm sounded. Lieutenant Minho's voice was quiet. To Navigator Kira, who plotted courses that no sane person would fly, and trusted us to pull them off. Captain Jiwon stood among her crew, not on the command deck but as one of them. They knew the odds. They knew what could happen. They volunteered anyway because they believed Earth deserved to stand free among the stars. We honor them not with words, but by living the freedom they died to protect. The crew stood in silence watching the stars wheel past. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was reassessing humanity. Species that had dismissed them now feared them. Empires that had planned invasion now reconsidered. The balance of power had shifted, not because humanity had the biggest fleet or the best technology, but because they'd proven something more important. They'd proven that humans, when pushed to the edge, didn't break. They adapted. They improvised. They found ways to win that no one else had considered, and most importantly, they refused to accept defeat as inevitable. The Taeguk continued its journey home, a battered ship carrying a victorious crew. Behind it, in the Torvak belt, debris from the Fifth Fleet drifted among the asteroids, a memorial to the day an empire learned that humans don't kneel. In the council chambers, in military academies across a dozen worlds, in the planning rooms of would-be conquerors, a new truth was being written into galactic understanding. Earth was small, humanity was young, their technology was primitive by galactic standards.